All right, we are back, and it is time for two regular segments. Every single Wednesday, we do DEF CON level updates, and we also answer questions in the mailbag segment. But we always start with the DEF CON levels, and as you can imagine, after the 25-10 loss to the LA Chargers, there are going to be some changes in the DEF CON level. Let's start with quarterback. There are probably people out there that are waiting because it was a 4. It was a 4. There's a lot of people probably waiting for me to drop this 2 DEF CON levels to a 2. It's rare that I do that, and it's not happening here. I have it going down. Of course, Aaron Rodgers did not play well. It's a 3, though. I have it going down to a 3. I just don't think that one performance was drastic enough to have me go that far. So it wasn't great. I wasn't happy. He was on the loser list. If you missed that podcast, go check it out on Monday. I've got quarterback going from a 4 to a 3. Let's go to running back. It stays at a 3. I really like what Jaylen Warren's able to do. Kenneth Gainwell's being used. I did find it very odd that Jaylen Warren was not used once on a third down play. Now, Mike Tomlin on Tuesday said, well, he's got to have a break at some point. I get it. But there's also a point where you have to have your best players on the field for the biggest moments. And when you're 0 for 9 before garbage time, 0 for 9 on third downs, you think that at some point you would say, hey, we're going to get Kenny G out there. And then we want Jaylen Warren on second and third down. Something along those lines. It just feels like coaching malpractice, but I like the running backs. They're a 3. Wide receivers and tight ends, they go down 1. They were a 3, they go down to 2. Whether it was some really sloppy routes, whether it was Calvin Austin's drop that turns into an interception, I don't know. It's not that they're dropping a ton of passes. This was the first game. I said this on the post-game show. Pretty sure I said it on my Winners and Losers podcast as well. This was the first game that I can remember this year looking at what I'm seeing and saying, wow, they really do need a wide receiver. Because normally it's okay that they just do things different. They use tight ends differently. They use their formations and their personnel groupings are different. It's just different. But man, that was the first time I was like, they do need another wide receiver. So wide receivers and tight ends goes down from a 3 to a 2. The offensive line also goes down 1. It was a 4. It goes down to a 3. Not a bad level to be at, but at the same time, we're not trending in the right direction. Was Isaac Seumalo the glue guy? Was he the guy that kind of kept everything together? I don't know. I really don't know. We'll find out if he can return this week against the Bengals and things pick up where they left off, because now Spencer Anderson can be that jumbo package eligible tight end. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I'll tell you this, that the offensive line does need to be better. They need to pass protect better. They need their quarterback to trust the protection more. That's going to be really big as well. Let's go to the defensive side of the football. The defensive backs, they stay at a 2. I know that the defensive backfield has been an issue. They're also really, really thin. So getting Asante Samuel Jr. is huge for this team, but it's a 2. Didn't go up, didn't go down, remains a 2. Inside linebackers, I thought that it's a 4. It stays at a 4. There might be people that want to complain about certain things. I'm not that guy. I do think that when Mike Tomlin said on Tuesday that the Steelers defense definitely was wearing thin by the end of the game, he wasn't lying, folks. Look at the time of possession. They had the football almost, it was 37 to, I don't know what the number was. It was incredible. It was well over 10 minutes more than the Steelers. Think about that for a defense. They are just out there all that time. I'm not going to put it on all those individuals. I'm not staying at a 4. And so same with the outside linebackers. I can't dock the outside linebackers for a loss when they have 5 sacks and 9 quarterback hits. I just can't do it. So I'm keeping it at a 4. The defensive line stays at a 3. I know there's some fans out there that didn't like the run defense, that thought it was a little sloppy. Defensive line, it's a 3, stays a 3. Special teams, I had to move. It was a 5, and I was more than happy, but I had to move it down to a 4. You had Keyshawn Williams muffing a punt, and you had Chris Boswell missing a field goal in the 40 range. What? That's unheard of. And Chris Boswell doesn't miss in the 40s. He might miss a 50-plus. He might miss in the weather. But inside, at like a 45-yard kick, are we serious? I'm not about to doubt for Chris Boswell. Like, mistakes happen. It's his 3rd missed field goal of the season, but that was the first one where there wasn't something else, like a it was a crazy long kick or his foot slipped out from under him because Acrisure Stadium's turf sucks. I don't know. Those factors weigh in. It goes down from a 5 to a 4. Now, the fan DEFCON level, I have it as a 2. It's staying at a 2 because even though last week, when you look at last week's DEFCON level and you're looking at the fan, it went up to a 2. I feel like there's some people that are just like, this is what we expect. It was a 1. A 1 is awful. 2, okay, trending in the right direction, but still, that's where I have it. So there are your DEFCON level updates. We will continue to update those every single week as long as the Steelers are playing football. And then even throughout the offseason, we'll do that as well. All right, so now it's time to dive into the mailbag segment where we answer questions. If you want to know, how do I get my question answered? It's simple. Every Tuesday morning, I put out a tweet. I use a GIF. I think they're funny. I like to laugh. You just respond to that tweet, and I will answer the question live on the air. Let's get this started with James. He says, I might be in the minority here, but can we petition to ban primetime games? I do not see the benefit to anyone with them. And no, I felt this way before all 3 losses this season. And he uses the crying emoji. Okay, James, I understand the sentiment. And trust me, the Steelers are 0-3 on primetime with 1 more game left. Last year, I think they were 2-2 in primetime. Primetime has not been what it usually is. It's usually the Steelers' time to shine on a national stage. It has not been that. And so they're never going to ban primetime or remove it. They make too much money. Amazon Prime on Thursday night, NBC on Sunday night, ABC, ESPN on Monday Night Football. You get where I'm going. These standalone games are a lot of money. They aren't going anywhere. All right, let's go to Will Caldwell. Hey, Jeff, well, I'm discouraged from Sunday's performance offensively. The defense showed some life. Do you think they can converge and play in a complementary manner down the stretch? Or is that what this team is, hit and miss or hot and cold? Thanks. I do want to say that in week 9 against the Colts, they did play complementary football. The Steelers had 6 takeaways. They turned that into 24 points. Yes, it could have been more, but still you understand what I'm saying. That is complementary football. So they've proven that they can do it, and I think they can get back to that. What you need is the Steelers offense to be able to string together some drives, to figure some things out, let the defense stay fresh, and then the defense, when they are presented with a potential takeaway, take advantage of it. We'll see if it happens on Sunday. All right, Brandon Diaz asked a lot of questions. Here we go. Number 1, worst game you've ever seen us play? That game on Sunday night was not the worst game I've ever seen the Steelers play. I was alive in some really bad eras of Steelers football. Trust me, it's been worse. I will say it's the first time in a long time that the Steelers, if the game felt like it was over with over 9 minutes left in regulation, that's the first time in a long time. Next question. Do you think a coaching change would help at all? Why or why not? At this stage, I don't. I don't think a coaching change is going to help at all. It would just take too long. It would be different. When they fired Matt Canada in season, they had Mike Sullivan and Eddie Faulkner calling the plays, and they kind of split up those duties. I don't think it's going to work out that way. If anything, a change is going to happen after the season. Next, is Father Time knocking on Roger's door? Yes, it is. Of course. He's going to be 42 like in a week or so, or 2 weeks. It's in December, I think. So, yeah, Father Time is undefeated. He always catches up with everyone. And then lastly, do you believe this team can win a playoff game, especially on the road, as it seems we may lose the lead in the division again? I don't want to say anything now. They've played 9 games. They have 8 left. A lot can change. I mean, you think about in the past when the Steelers have looked really good and then they fall off. Maybe they're swooning early and they're going to peak late. That's a hope. We'll see. Let's go to Annie. Hi, Jeff. What's your take on releasing Thornhill and picking up Castro? Thornhill hasn't been the best this season, but I'm not sure an undrafted rookie will make an impact either. I don't think, Annie, that's a great question. I don't think this was all about Thornhill or Castro for Thornhill. I think this was Castro plays special teams. He's a willing special teams contributor. He can fill in at safety if necessary. But once they move Jalen Ramsey to safety, and if Jabril Peppers is going to be coming back soon, which I think he will, maybe not this week, but soon, then Juan Thornhill is expendable. As Mike Tomlin said, he wasn't, quote unquote, up to snuff. His play wasn't. So in that case, I don't think this was a Castro for Thornhill. It was just a Castro. We want him. We covet his skill set. We like what he brings to the roster. Thornhill, because of all the other changes that I mentioned, and Jabril Peppers maybe returning, maybe we don't need him anymore. That's what I think. All right, let's go to Tendercat. He asked a couple questions. First, is everyone finally done drinking the Steelers Kool-Aid? I mean, did we all expect them to go out there and have a dominant performance? Are we finally learning this team and coaching tree will always disappoint? If you always expect a disappointment, you'll never be disappointed. He said, this is only directed towards the Steelers. I do not live my life expecting disappointments, just to clarify. Okay, I guess the question that you have to ask yourself is, did you drink the Kool-Aid after one win in week 9? The Steelers have lost 3 of the last 4 games, all 3 of those being on a primetime set in a national setting. And they've been bad, whether it's the defensive performance against the Bengals on Thursday night, getting completely waxed by the Packers and losing a lead in the second half, or the unbelievable lack of offensive efficiency on Sunday night in LA. It doesn't matter. Unless you're watching a different game, you can't be surprised when the Steelers lose games. You can't. How can you be surprised by that? I don't think that I'm not disappointed. I am not surprised. Do I think they're going to win this week? I've got my thoughts on that. I'll talk about it on Friday. But ultimately, if you're drinking that Kool-Aid after one win, or you haven't been paying attention to what's been happening recently. Tendercat also said another thought. Thank you and the others that are behind the Steel Curtain Network. You guys really do shine during this purgatory. I couldn't imagine staying awake after that game and recording. I turned the game off after the third quarter and went straight to bed. You aren't alone. I'm always texting my dad and brother during Steeler games, and it was halftime short after. They're like, yeah, I'm done. My brother's guy had to get up and travel on Monday. He's like, I got to get up early to go. My dad's like, I just don't feel like staying up and watching this crap. I don't blame him. It is part of the job. We are going to be here. And the one thing that I preach at the Steel Curtain Network, both for the website, steelcurtainnetwork.com, and on the podcast side, is consistency. If you are a part of this network, you're going to do it no matter what. I have no interest in fair weather content creators. People that say, oh, I know I normally do that article, but they lost and I'm kind of bummed about that. So I'm just not going to do it this week. Nope, that's not what we're doing. You're going to do that article every single week because you said you're going to do that article every single week. If they lose every game for the rest of the year, you do that. If you have a podcast, you do the podcast. Use it as therapy. I don't know, but I appreciate the kind words, Tendercat. Thank you very much. All right, let's go to Todd Hall. I have a stat question. This actually gets answered during this, and I didn't have to do anything, but I'll read it to y'all. I have a stat question that might be better suited for Dave Schofield. No offense, none taken. But I will ask you, the term strip sack, does the player get credit for a sack and forced fumble, even if the quarterback does not go to the ground after fumbling the ball, or is it just a forced fumble? Dave, getting tagged on Twitter, answered and said, good question. When a player forces a fumble from the quarterback at or behind the line of scrimmage in what was deemed to be a passing play, it counts as a sack and a forced fumble. What it does not count as, which other sacks are, is a tackle for loss because the quarterback was not tackled. I feel like right now it's like that the more you know star just went across the screen. All right, let's go to Ryan Carter. He said, hey, Jeff, I know Tomlin is everyone's enemy. I think the Steelers are suffering from a lack of coaches. They're messy and undisciplined. Not enough reps at practice. Tomlin is guilty of not fighting / wanting more coaches, but can we blame him for the players on the field, on-field play? I would like to add that as a head coach with an OC and DC, the head coach's duties are completely different than teams with the head coach as the OC and DC. The Steelers are trying to make up for the lack of coaching with an older roster, which is clearly not the answer. Sorry for the essay. Ryan, you make a very valid point. I think that there's something Steelers fans and the Steelers organization love to be unique. They love to be different. They love to be able to kind of cling to these weird little things. For instance, everyone loves to talk about 3 head coaches since 1969. Okay, like they love it. They get off on it. They also love the fact that, oh, we have the smallest coaching staff in the NFL. Well, I hear that and I say, no, the coaching thing is the coaching thing. I get it. But I hear that and think, well, why is the entire league having a larger staff and keeping that staff, and that the Steelers stick to the really small staff? I'm not so sure if adding coaches would help. They tried that a couple years ago. They added some some weird titles to some coaches, and they ended up cutting ties with him because probably they didn't find them useful or worth the money. I don't know. It is difficult when I think about it to try and figure this stuff out, but ultimately it's one of those situations where you're like, man, sometimes you just wish that some change would happen because doing the same thing over and over again is just the definition of just idiocy. And let's finish this up as we always do with Steeler Fan 69. He said he always provides the jokes in case you're first time listening. First joke. Did you know that Shakespeare's wife ended up leaving him? She was tired of all that drama. Okay. Next one, a truckload of Vicks Vapor Rub overturned on the highway. There was no congestion for 8 hours. That's a good one. And lastly, I ran out of toilet paper, so I had to use an old newspaper. Talk about the times are tough. All right, very good. I want to thank everyone that contributed. I want to thank Tim Lyons at the for the Behind Enemy Line segment, and also everyone that contributed to the Mailbag segment. That's it for me. I'll be back on Friday. Jeremy Jerome Betts will join me for All Bets Are Off. We'll give our predictions and all that fun stuff. In the meantime, make sure you check out steelcurtainnetwork.com. That website is totally free. Create an account at the top of the page. You can comment on my articles and everyone else's articles. It's a great little community we're building, and it is growing rapidly. Check us out, steelcurtainnetwork.com. All right, that's it. Have a great rest of your week, folks. You know how he finishes up. Be safe, be kind, and God bless. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you on Friday. Go Steelers.